Hello, everybody. Welcome to this live broadcast of the SCM Premium Partner Session. My name is Martin Lovers. I'm the CEO and Chief Trend of Supply Chain Media. And I could say, we are approaching the end of 2020. It has been a real roller coaster for a lot of companies, also for our company. We have seen steep drops, but also we have seen amazing upswings. And a famous quote, it takes a real storm in an average person's life to make him realize how much worrying he has done over the squalls. Okay, I'm Martin Lovers. I'm the CEO and Chief Trend Watch of Supply Chain Media. And we represent Supply Chain Media, and we are a media company. But we have a theme this year, and it's the storm, COVID-19, as you can imagine. And what is supply chain media, and who am I? I see myself as a lighthouse rather than a lifeboat. I do not rescue, but instead help others to find their own ways to shore. So we do a lot of research, and of course we publish magazines, but we see ourselves as a lighthouse. Okay, this session we have a full hour, and we have 4 parts. And the first part is about awareness, being aware of the coming storm. Actually, it's an ongoing storm. And we're going to look back with one of the partners we expected to have here at our table. But since the Netherlands has been in a lockdown since yesterday, our guests can't be here at my side, but they will be with us remotely. So I will introduce them later on. So and the second part is about interest, gaining the captain's interest. How do you reach out to decision makers in this storm? Third part is about desire for a lifebuoy. How do we make sure that people in need find you? And it's testing the sense of urgency at your customers or your prospects. And the final part is about action, coming to the rescue. We talk about the solutions. How do you make sure that they find what you need? We have a 1-hour session, and after this we have also a Microsoft Teams session, so you can speak individually to all the experts in this broadcast. All right, first we talk about the first phase, awareness. As you can see, not all storms come to disrupt your life. Some come to clear your path. A famous quote by Paul Coelho, a novelist. And with this, I would like to introduce our first guest, Alfons Willessen, partner of inNOWvate. Alfons, hi.
Hello, Martijn. Good to be here.
All right, so inNOWvate is one of our premium partners, and we've done a lot of with inNOWvate this year. We're going to talk about this later on. But first, we're going to talk about a study we have done among 142 manufacturing companies and some retailers in March. And as you can see, there were a lot of bottlenecks happening at the first wave of COVID-19 in Europe, but also around the world. There were peaks in demand, drops in demands, drops in supply. But basically what we also found out, there was a lack of visibility. On the side of the customers, their demand, but also a lack of visibility on the supply side. So you see all kind of bottlenecks here in the physical flow of goods and also in capacity. So I was wondering, Alfons, what was your view on that period?
Yes, talk about the first period of the crisis, March, April. And I like the metaphor you're using about a storm, because everyone was in a storm. And in the beginning, maybe March, April, some companies thought, okay, it's a small storm. I won't be hit by the storm. But I think in the end, everyone was hit by the storm. And it's depending on your industry, the company, whether it was disruptions and waves because of demand, supply, not being able to produce, or whatever. But everyone was hit. I think what's one common theme was what all companies all around the world had was uncertainty and indeed lack of visibility on what's happening on my customer side, but also on the supplier side. And I think that's recognizable here in what you also investigated. So visibility, absolutely. And what we did to give an example, we started to model the automotive supply chain and to create visibility across the chain. So not only the OEM, but also the tier 1, tier 3, tier 2, 3, 4, etc. To create that visibility, to help them to get back some visibility and help them to manage the uncertainty.
And, you know, in the previous crisis, the financial crisis in 2008, we saw a lot of bullwhips. So with this kind of algorithm, this kind of sharing of data, you try to, you know, make sure these kind of bullwhips won't happen as much like they might have happened in 2008.
Correct. That's exactly what we did. We tried to create visibility for the whole chain, because indeed there were bullwhips created, and are still happening, by the way. And so it's very good to see what's happening upstream and downstream in your chain. And in the situation where a lot of companies were in, was already visibility was less with their own customers and their own suppliers, let alone having a full visibility on the total chain. And in the model, we could illustrate what was happening and was going to happen and is still going to happen in the different tiers.
Yeah. So basically how Lee said, you know, you need to share your data across the whole chain to make sure that everybody is in sync. Otherwise you get the bullwhip and then you get way much turbulence upstream than you should, you know. And what we see right now, the Netherlands has been past the second wave of COVID-19. Maybe we are heading to a third wave of COVID-19. So it's like supply chain bullwhips. We're seeing all kinds of waves, and this is something we have to be aware of. All right, this was our survey in March. Now getting to the next phase, our interest phase is, you know, going to gain the interest of the decision makers. So that's what we did. We did also some surveys among decision makers later on. In this phase, you know, it's about learning. And I quote, "I'm not afraid of storms, for I'm learning how to sail my ship." And another comment of a professional sailor, he said, you know, the winners are going to win in the storm, because in calm weathers everybody is able to sail. So you can see the winners are winning into the storm. Like I said, we did another survey in June. So after the first peak, the first wave of COVID-19 early in March, we did a survey among over 100 manufacturing and retail companies in Europe. And here you see the results. And not surprisingly, sales and operations planning, or IBP, integrated business planning, is still number one. But we also made a distinction between leading companies who are on the supply chain maturity level 4 or 5, according to the Gartner grid, and the rest. So in orange, you see the response of the leading companies, and in blue, you see the overall response. And as you can see, there are some remarkable changes. So if you look at the leading company in orange, they have different investment plans for the next 12 months. End-to-end supply chain visibility is number 2 overall, but it's even more so, it's number 1 for the leading companies. But also supply chain network design is a major topic leading companies are going to invest to. Maybe they are creating digital twins of some sort. And also real-time transport visibility is also in high demand at leading companies. And finally, supply chain risk management is key and is also high on the agenda of investment within leading companies. Alfonso, how do you look at these graphs? Do you recognize these findings?
Yes, again, very recognizable. And again, the one on top, S&OP, IBP, also very recognizable. I think one of the things, by the way, which you've seen this year is that probably a lot of attention has been now on S&OE and be very operational, so higher frequency, etc. The investments in software, it's again very recognizable, looking at what happened, the need for visibility. What's also striking is the difference between the more mature professional companies who are in level 4 and 5. I think they already were dealing with supply chain risk management or were ahead of other companies. And they're taking now the next steps. They're taking the steps to become more resilient. So what we saw last year was it was not only one event, but multiple events going on and on. So the inherent need to be resilient, it's there. And that's what you see a lot of companies are focusing on. So both on the demand side, to be agile with your customers, but especially, and I think that's what you see here back also in the investment, more focus on your suppliers, on your network. Where are my products coming from? How can we be more resilient within the strategy we have? So, yeah, I think it's very recognizable and a very important topic, which is happening now and which will be a topic for the next years to come.
What we also saw earlier in March and later on also in the second quarter is that a lot of companies were taking up the frequency in their planning. From a monthly cycle, they went to a weekly cycle. And at the peak of COVID-19 pandemic, it was understandable that they were leveling up their frequency of their planning and their negotiations about what they're going to produce and how. What do you expect for the near future? Will be remain on that higher frequency level, or will they get back to a monthly cycle, or will it change?
I think the high frequency, which happened with a lot of companies, I think it basically improved the S&OE, so the focus on the execution. And I wouldn't be surprised if that more and better operational grip remains. But what you see now, that a lot of companies let go of the tactical and longer term. So I think that needs to be added again. So in the end, hopefully, it will result in an improvement of the S&OE process, and in addition, picking up again the link to tactical and long-term planning.
Yeah, and with some companies, some leading companies, they were able to build a digital twin within weeks, like Merck, Medtronic, Unilever. They were able to build a digital twin of the whole supply chain, including the suppliers and their channels. So not only their own factories and warehouses and contract manufacturers, but the whole chain. So that's also something what you what you saw actually in the last year, the coming up of the digital twins in that environment. And what do you expect overall? Is that something of a new trend that more digital twins will be built in the next year?
Yeah, I think that will continue. And of course, the companies and examples you mentioned are very often the companies who had the power and the investments already in digital tools. So they could accelerate, and they will accelerate, that will continue. At the same time, also the tools that are available, it's much better than what was before. So I think also it will be available now to more companies. And again, each company needs to think what's relevant for us. How can we invest in things, and how should we invest in things like digital twins or other digital developments? But that's something here to stay, absolutely.
Right. So next, we also did a survey among supply chain executives, so COOs and chief supply chain officers within well-known multinationals. And on the left-hand side, you see we ask, what are the two major mega trends hitting their companies? Not surprisingly, digitalization was number one among the answers of the executives. And on number two was sustainability. So which two mega trends are impacting your company? Number two was sustainability. And on the right-hand side, we asked also in the same survey, what is on your boardroom agenda? So name the two topics on your boardroom agenda. And surprisingly, sustainability dropped to number 5. So, Alfons, can you reflect on that?
Yeah, it's I think also logical. First of all, the main mega trend which you see both on the left and the right, digitalization, that's clear, and there's a topic everywhere. I think sustainability, it's the second mega trend, as you see here. But I think this year, due to the storm all companies are in, and focus on operations, focus on surviving, so focus on cash, focus on serving your customers. It's to me quite logical that sustainability dropped down a bit as a boardroom topic. But I think it's still a key megatrend. Yeah. But I can understand that the focus for a lot of companies is just on running the business now, servicing the customers, make sure the products are there, focus on cost, cash, etc. So yeah, I think boardroom topics have become also a bit more operational this year.
Yeah. So this is a part of our supply chain trend compass studies we have launched last year as a new trend, mega trend. Pandemics, COVID-19 is an example of this. So you see, pandemic is a mega trend, on number 3, new this year. And you also see it back on the number 4 on the right-hand side on the dotted line. You see supply chain risk management is also, and business continuity is also high on the agenda of the companies. You talked about resilience. If you look at the topics on the right-hand side, business transformation, digitalization, operational excellence and cost containment, customer excellence and portfolio optimization, and then supply chain risk management. Could you all those 4 topics summarize as a part of resilience?
That's maybe a bit too much, but I think, yes, resilience is probably the key word. And when you look at supply chain risk management as now number 4 on the boardroom agenda, that's of course what happens when it's urgent in a crisis. But I think resilience needs to be a continuous topic. And we always talk about a lifestyle instead of a hype. So resilience as looking and identifying risk and how can our organization be resilient is definitely a topic going forward. And the other elements, yes, being able to look at how do we run our business, how do we run it smart, cost effective, in function of our strategy. I think for all that, take a second look then also at resilience. So I think resilience encompasses all those elements.
And you compared the impact of a pandemic like COVID-19, you compared it to a heart attack. And you've wrote about it and we have discussed it in a webinar. So how do you, how could you compare a heart attack with a pandemic? And how would you change your lifestyle is what you are referring to?
Yeah, that's maybe a very brutal metaphor, but why I use the metaphor is that when someone has had a heart attack and is on the intensive care unit, hooked up to all the monitors, then you start realizing, okay, I should have listened and I should have done something on my eating habits, drinking, exercise, etc., etc. But that's after the facts, and I think a lot of companies are now still hooked up to the monitor. And I think in supply chain we always talk about trade-offs, and you start with a strategy. And let me take the example of your strategy being efficient. It's great to have an efficient strategy, but it also means that sometimes you have to sacrifice flexibility, agility for the sake of efficiency. And I think this current crisis hopefully wakes up a lot of people on, okay, but where is our agility, flexibility? Where are we resilient? And how can we make sure that it stays on the agenda? And that hopefully when second quarter next year, whatever, we're going back to a bit of the old normal. Don't go back to the old way of working. But I think resilience, like I said, it should be a lifestyle.
You know, the University of Warwick, Janet Gottsell has done some studies about how they handled COVID-19, what kind of buffers did they use. And most of the companies, 2/3, used inventory as buffers. But sadly enough, a lot of companies had the wrong inventories. So is inventory a bit of obesity and, maybe leading into a higher chance of a heart attack, having the wrong inventory and not able to deliver your customers?
No, inventory, of course, it always starts with having the right inventory. If you've got the wrong inventory, then of course it's always wrong. I think resilience, looking at resilience and how to make your company resilient, you can do it in different ways. And inventory, building the right inventory at the right place or with the right suppliers can be good solutions. But there are a lot of other different ways how to do it. And I think an interesting example is I mentioned the automotive supply chain, where we modeled the whole chain. The automotive supply chain, the OEMs they're extremely lean and hardly any inventory within their production, but that also made them very vulnerable. And especially if you look at the effects now in the upstream tiers, there the last half year building the right inventory could have helped them for the peak which we are seeing now. Again, it's always inventory is one of the solutions. Another solution can be capacity or time. But think about your situation, your strategy, and what's the right choice.
Okay. All right. So based on our surveys, we have come up with an editorial program for next year. So on the left-hand side, you see the editorial topics of Supply Chain Magazine, our Dutch monthly magazine. And it's covering the whole spectrum of supply chain management topics, from resilience, just discussed, but also what we call convergent supply chain planning, how you get supply chain planning across the chain and into your company. But also we're going to talk about, and in the magazines, about e-fulfillment, especially about last mile and with the upswing of e-commerce in the Netherlands, in Europe, worldwide. We're going to address data science and all kind of digitalization trends. Sustainability will be, of course, on our agenda for next year. End-to-end supply chain visibility, and also supply chain ecosystem and talent management. And leading into the same kind of topics of our European quarterly magazines called Supply Chain Movement, it's following the same topics as our Dutch supply chain magazine. So we have a whole range of topics to cover for next year. All right, getting back to our collaboration this year. Supply chain media is in development of a new concept called SCM Wisdom. That's a knowledge bank with machine learning, and we're doing pilots right now with big multinationals. It's like a Netflix of supply chain articles. On an individual basis, you will create your own profile, and based on that, you will get recommendations, and you get a reading list of articles other colleagues have already read or should be reading. So that's on our upper left side to position it on the content side. And on the right side is the Value Chain Academy, and you see also, we get questions: how do you position your knowledge bank to, let's say, Apex or Gartner? A small disclaimer, it's nothing to say that the Value Chain Academy on the upper right side is the best. All of the products here, all the brands here have their value. But Alfons, could you tell me about something about the Value Chain Academy as part of your proposition from innovation?
Yes, the Value Chain Academy, basically what we do, we always tailor our trainings to the customer, to the needs of the customer, to the target audience. And I think that's why the elements on the left, practical, case-driven and personalized, are critical. We focus very much on how to apply the theory. I mean, you can read books or you can read articles, but we try to transfer it to the working environment. So how to translate it to your situation and how to apply it. And bottom line, what we try to create by that is a continuous learning environment that everyone always has the possibility to develop and to learn.
And what you see right now, and we are also in conversation with large multinationals with a lot of internal supply chain academies. Now you see it maybe a bit on a lower level. And how do you see it in your environment? What is your experience talking to bigger multinationals about supply chain training and development?
Yeah, I think in general, if we look at 2020, training was not the highest on the agenda. So unfortunately, we saw less training than what we saw in the years before. But unfortunately, the need for development is still there. But I think it has a reason. One of the reasons is that I think people were quite stressed out, and then to ask them to do some trainings next to all the Zoom and team meetings they had, that's quite difficult. But we see the discussions coming again on, the need is there for development. Another interesting thing is what we see, that we strongly believe in the 70-20-10 principle. And so we strongly believe in that people develop just by doing their job or working with colleagues. And I think that's also where the Value Chain Academy and SCM Wisdom can play a role, because it can be available remote, and it can be an additional element also to socialize, but also to fill the gaps of the 70 and 20, which you see a bit now.
Yeah, and now a lot of companies, have sent their employees home, so a lot of them are working remotely at home. And what we see now is a high need of engagement. So next, on the left-hand side, you see our screen of our knowledge bank. So this is a result of a search page. So you see all kind of recommendations of articles based on your personal profile. What we did in July, we did a workshop with Givaudan. That's a Swiss multinational manufacturing company of flavors and fragrances all over the world. And we did a workshop in a 3D environment called Aula, as an onboarding for their use of the knowledge bank called SCM Wisdom. First, we are gonna look at a short impression video of this workshop, and he will explain how this 3D environment in Aula looks like. Start the video. As you all can see, it's quite funny to be around in this kind of environment. This workshop actually with Givaudan was 3 hours, and there was no fatigue. So normally in Zoom or Microsoft Teams, after 30 minutes or at least 60 minutes, you are very fatigued about the whole experience of a conference call. But that's not the case in this environment. So as you can see, we did a lot of different things in this environment, roundtable discussions and posted sessions. So Alfons, could you explain how to use this and what is the value of this kind of 3D environment?
Yeah, we started to work with this in 2019 because we were looking for something which was more interactive in a remote way than the standard webinar. Now, of course, not knowing that 2020 the whole Teams Zoom would explode. But still, I think the advantage of Aula is what they call the full immersion. Once you log in and once you're 5 or 10 minutes into the workshop, you don't realize anymore you're an avatar. I mean, I was very skeptical, being a bit too old, about what's an avatar, how am I going to do this? But it worked, and it means that your attention is really to the workshop and what you're doing. And I think it is successful and it works if you use it with the strengths it have, which is when you've got exercises, when there is interaction, when you want people to network also in this environment. And that's where we see it's very strong. And we use it in trainings, and we use it also a lot in consulting, being able to do workshops and sessions which we wouldn't have been able to do in a remote way by just having Zoom or Teams or Google Hangout or whatever. Yeah.
So quite interestingly enough, last month we did a workshop in Aula with 20 chief operation officers and chief supply chain officers of huge multinationals, well-known multinationals, and we did it on a Friday from 11 to 4:30. And all those executives stayed on, and they thought they find it a treat to be there compared to the meetings in Zoom. And some executives said to me, we like to use this kind of environment for boardroom meetings. So if you go into a Zoom session, a very operational meeting about a customer complaint, important enough, in Zoom meeting, looks all the same compared to a very important executive board meeting talking about a merger or something like that. And said, some executives, we like to have some sort of environment, an executive board environment in 3D possibly, then you are in a different meeting and you have a different kind of meeting. So we're looking forward to collaborate on this. So we have a shared license with this, and we're going to use it also for next year. So Alfons, I would like to thank you for participating in this broadcast, and I would like to thank you for collaborating extensively in this 3D environment, and also with the Bullwhip project you are into in resilience. So I have a little gift. Normally I would hand it over to you. So last year, or 2 years ago, we created this small tile here about supply chain. But this year we have created this tile of 9 quotes about supply chain. One is from Mark Engel, Chief Supply Chain Officer of Unilever. So I will hand it over to you the next time we'll meet in person. So I would like to thank you for being here. And Alfons will also be available at 6 in Microsoft Teams. So Alfons, thank you, and I speak to you later.
Thank you, Martijn. It was good to be here, and looking forward to the collaboration again next year.
Okay, thanks. Now we're going over to the second half of our 1 hour, and we talk about the desire phase. So desire for a life buoy. If companies are in need, they want a life buoy, they want to have a good picture that they are going to be helped out. And Leonardo da Vinci said, fix your course on a star and then you'll navigate any storm. With me I have my marketing colleague Nicole. Nicole, hi.
Hi Martijn, good afternoon. Hi everybody at home as well.
All right. So my colleagues from marketing and myself, we did a survey among B2B marketeers, so part of your audience, and we're going to discuss this. So first, we did ask some questions about the awareness, brand awareness of business-to-business partners like yours. What I find remarkable about this diagram is, considering if you are talking about awareness, brand awareness, a lot of the companies said they are investing a lot of money in LinkedIn and Google. And I don't know how they have used it or how they have applied it, but Google Ads is just about words. And there's a saying, a picture is more than 1,000 words worth. So, it's all about words here. But what is your opinion about this survey result, Nicole?
I agree that it was very surprisingly actually what came out of our survey. We expected that a lot more marketeers would shift through print magazines in 2021. We also compared that to the study of Ubiquity, from which is the quote alongside the diagram. And they said that print magazines are the greatest contributors to a campaign's ROI. And besides that result, they also said that print magazines are really increasing in attentiveness just because of a lot of mail nowadays comes in digitally, that the fact that you are sending something physically by mail stands out alone. And also we all heard Donald Trump say fake news a lot of times in 2020. So in online content and online pictures, it's really hard to tell fake news from the truth. So that also increases the trustworthiness of print magazines.
And we all know it's kind of a challenge to get these print magazines to the right address, especially when people are working from home right now. But that's the new challenge. But still, you're right. Getting a print magazine at your home is totally different than getting some possibly fake news online. Oh, the next question we asked was about the interest phase. To me, on the right-hand side, on the yellow, you see about webinars and blue about content. So, Nicole, what is your view on the results of this part of the survey?
I think it's most important to remember that the AIDA model is based on the fact that you need more than one contact moment with your target group in order for a campaign to succeed. So I think that the yellow, which represents webinars, are proving that a lot of marketeers are kind of skipping a few steps, maybe, which is very understandable, to gain leads as fast as possible. But in my opinion, it would be better to create more content, how hard it can be, just to gain interest first before organizing a webinar.
Yeah, I also agree, because I saw a lot of companies jumping to organize a webinar because they had to do something. They couldn't go to trade shows, and all of a sudden they wanted to do a webinar, but they didn't prepare it up front about a topic. So a lot of companies were not even sure what to talk about during the webinars. And what you see here, well, this is another source, so maybe you can comment on this.
Yeah, I think for me as a marketeer, this is very recognizable. Content creation is one of the hardest parts of marketing. It's also very time consuming, maybe because it is hard. And we experience that when we are talking with our partners too, that they have trouble putting down the exact right words for an editorial, which is only 200 characters. But you have to find a way to get to the focus point of what you're actually trying to say. And I think also in 2021, the quote will still remain, content is king. So yeah, we have to make it work.
Yeah. Another thing is, as a publishing company, media company, we are totally used of creating content. We have our editorial calendar, so we are already apt to this kind of new content creation. We did a lot of surveys in last year among manufacturing companies, retail companies, software vendors, 3PL companies, consultancy firms. So we were already up to this challenge. Next, in this survey, we ask about the desire to create leads. So what do you think of this right-hand side of the slide?
Yeah, what we see is that desire drives action. So this is the stage that comes right before a webinar or a hybrid event. So again, here I think that the webinar itself is still a little bit too early. We use LinkedIn a lot. We are very successful with it. And I think it is important to tell that we do not focus on the mass that's on LinkedIn, but we have created 3 target groups, which is more of a community or like a fan base of our brands that we use to motivate to register for a webinar, for example. And the other thing that stood out was that so little marketeers use dedicated announcements. That is one of our greatest contributors when we are generating leads for registrations. And in my opinion, you really need third-party announcements to have greater reach than your own community. You want to reach new people as well, not only your own community or fan base.
And when you look at the right-hand side graph, you see the gray area. Again, that's LinkedIn and Google. And it is a similar amount in the awareness phase. To me, you know, they are skipping a few phases in marketing. They're jumping to LinkedIn and Google as if LinkedIn and Google is the silver bullet for all their answers. So that's my take from these graphs. Last part, the action part. On the right-hand side, you see what the respondents answered about where do they find the best results in the action phase. Nicole, what's your take on this?
This diagram was exactly actually how we expected it to be. Of course, because of the coronavirus pandemic, none of our partners are planning to organize or to participate in a physical event, at least for the first half year of 2021. And they all are looking for opportunities in digital events or hybrid events. And some of them already organized or participated in that. So yeah, we really took that into account when we made our planning for 2021. And I think that will show in our event calendar as well.
And what surprised me, you know, still almost one quarter of the respondents said, you know, they're hoping or they're planning for on-location events. That's the darker green on the right-hand side. Another thing, what surprised me, that more than a quarter are, recognize that the hybrid event, so both on location and live streaming at the same time, is something to look out for. On the right-hand side, you see the webinars and the digital conferences. Almost 50% of the marketeers are looking into this kind of action-based events. And a smaller part, that is the pink one on the right-hand side, that's the workshops in 3D. And it's understandable that, you know, a lot of the companies, a lot of the vendors don't know about this. And after the video, they do know. But for next year on International Women's Day, we're going to organize a sponsored workshop in 3D with avatars in Aula. And we will partner up with Blue Yonder, the software vendor. And so they recognize the value of creating a 3D environment and sponsoring that kind of workshops. With this, Nicole, I would like to thank you for your opinion about our survey. And Nicole will be available at 6 o'clock, also in Microsoft Teams. So Nicole, thank you.
Thank you as well, Martijn.
All right, and now we come to the final part of the awareness, interest, desire, and action cycle. Now it's time for action, coming to the rescue. So an activist, an American activist, Faye Weddleton, said, "The only safe ship in a storm is leadership." And we're coming to the rescue, and I would like to introduce Hugo, my colleague for account management. Coming to the rescue, Hugo, welcome.
Welcome to you, Martijn, and to you all the audience, of course, today.
All right, and the final part, we talk about action. And first, you know, we talk about what we have done for our partners this year and in the last years. So this slide is about the amount of leads we have generated in the last 3 years, from 2018 until 2020. and the year is not finalized yet. But Hugo, could you comment on this slide, on these figures?
Yes, of course. These are the downloads from co-creations we have made with our premium partners. And then I talk about the checklist, the roadmaps, the mind maps, self-assessments. And last month we create our first value stream map. In 2019, you see, we have almost 8,000 downloads. And this year, more than 10,500 in Europe and the Netherlands. When we look at the participants of our webinars, you see the light orange. Then the webinars we did since May this year, we see that the leads we generated almost doubled this year. So Nicole and you, Martijn, already told about the important content creation, and I think this diagram shows and proves that content creation is one of the most important items for having successful marketing strategy and generate new leads. To have a successful strategy, we believe that your marketing should follow the already explained steps of AIDA: the awareness, the interest, desire, and action. Your potential customers will recognize you after 6-7 times, I think, and with the AIDA, you can reach them on different ways. Partners who did this AIDA strategy with us, I will want to share with you a list of the downloads we had from the top 5 in Europe this year. I think that we make really important content shows that the end-to-end supply chain visibility assessment we make ourselves was downloaded 547 times. Our own IT subway map Europe was downloaded 275 times. And then we see that the important topics you already mentioned, the checklist for optimizing transport procurement from Chainalytics was downloaded 222 times. And the white paper Key Differentiations Control Tower for MPO was downloaded 206 times this year. And the roadmap to supply chain resilience planning, and we did it in the second half of this year from Q&A Dynasys, was downloaded 180 times until now. That 2 of the top 5 downloadable content topics are from supply chain media proves that our content we create as a company very interesting topics to our customers and to our readers, of course, your potential clients. Helping you to create important content is a good opportunity for your right marketing strategy. In the beginning, I told you that we had a great number of participants in the webinars we did together with our premium partners. I may say it was a great success. And that's why, and Martijn, maybe you can show the next slide. We start this year of next year in 2021 with Webinar Wednesday. Everyone will know that on Wednesday, Supply Chain Media is doing a webinar with one of our partners. We will organize it every Wednesday at 4 p.m., almost every Wednesday at 4 p.m. CET. And I think with great topics. I already know when you see the topics, and Martijn will show them to you in a moment, that you will think that one is mine. We will do this webinars in a program where it's possible to sit down afterwards with participants and talk with them one-to-one as we do in Teams, but we do it with a program that it is possible to do it in the program itself. So Martijn, maybe you want to tell us something more about the topics.
Yeah, I did a lot of webinars this year. I did a lot of moderation within these webinars. So it was more like talk radio with no cameras on, and that was the secret of our success. We have a high rate of attentiveness, 95 to 98% of the audience were listening the whole hour, based on the interactive conversation I had with an expert from one of our partners. And we did a lot of webinars with a huge audience, with McKinsey, with PwC, with Anaplan Air Technology, on great and new interesting topics. But the whole thing is, sometimes I did 3 webinars in a week, and we want to make a real schedule about doing webinars. And we want to explain and program the whole range of topics we're going to address in the webinars for the whole next year. So I won't go through the whole list of webinars we're going to do next year, but basically we cover the whole range of editorial topics I discussed earlier in our magazines. We all address these topics also in webinars. And you can see the bold type topics are already claimed by partners. And the italics are already about our own surveys, our own IT submit map, our own top 28 supply chain executive Europe. So we will already announce all the topics we're going to do next year. So all the companies can already assign in their calendar on Wednesday to watch and to participate in this webinar. And just like Hugo said, it's not only about this interactive conversation we're going to have with our partners about specific topics. 30 minutes afterwards, we have a networking session so people can sit down with the experts in a digital environment. But they can also have a meet and greet with other participants in the webinar audience. So if it's about sustainability, they can look up with other participants in the webinar audience to have a meet and greet and to learn from each other on that specific topic. So Webinar Wednesday will be as of second week of January. On the 13th of January, we're going to start and kick off it. And then I will be live on the air every Wednesday at 4 o'clock. And next, we're also going to organize our inNOWvate supply chain event. Hugo, can you explain something about our inNOWvate supply chain event for next year and maybe for about this year?
Yes, sure. I think with all these issues we have shown you, we have shown you that supply chain media is not a normally common publisher. We also organize our own international events. And what you see is that we, on the 18th of May, for the fourth time, we will organize inNOWvate supply chain event. The last 3 years, we have seen a huge growth of attendees to this event. In 2019, about 400. And this year was our first hybrid edition. It was also the first hybrid edition of an event in supply chain ever. And we had over 730 attendees. inNOWvate is an event with great keynote speakers and physical and digital possibilities for sponsors with their own booth and sessions in 2021, because we will do it hybrid, but more than that. So also in a digital way, a customer or a sponsor can have his or their own booth in supply and inNOWvate. So that's I think that's a great new topic, new item.
And maybe you wonder what is the unique selling point or what is the differentiator about inNOWvate supply chain event. But basically, we are focusing on startups and innovation. So last year, when we had our inNOWvate supply chain event on site, we had 29 supply chain startups from all over Europe on location near Amsterdam. So we did an overview and research about 160 supply chain startups in Europe. And we have published it in our maturity matrix in our magazines and also available online. Because of COVID-19, we had to postpone our planned event from this year in May to October. Surprisingly enough, we had a lot of online attendees, more than 700, like Hugo said. And we had, at this event in October, we had 4 startup pitching from all over Europe. So basically, we could pivot quite easily from on location to a hybrid form. And I do think that a hybrid form, filming on location, gives a totally different environment and experience than only online events, like talking to a screen or whatever. So my feedback from the viewers was that I'm talking to keynote speakers on a screen. I was there in a hotel like this, and I talked to a lot of keynote speakers, have a conversation, added to the value and the depth of the keynotes and the presentations. So we're going to do that again in May, in a hybrid shape and form. And again, we will use also an online environment where you have lounges where you can have a meet and greet. So we enhance the experience compared to this year.
Yes, and for sponsors, of course, their own sessions and